The next section I want to talk about within the technique section of successful drumming is something called finger control technique. Now, this is a technique that completely changed the way I approached the drum set and completely changed the way I thought about technique. Now, every time you hit the drums, there is a series of motions that your arm makes and your hand makes. And in order to perform the best or play the best, everything needs to be working together and everything needs to be working in harmony. So when you hit the drums, there's something that's happening up here in your forearm, there's something that's happening with your grip, there's something that's happening in your wrist, as well as your fingers. Now, fingers are something that every new drummer neglects. They don't understand how important it is, number one, to have proper grip that allows you to actually access your fingers and the muscles within your fingers. Now, your fingers are able to do a lot twitchier motions, I should say, and so you actually can get faster speeds by using your fingers. But I want to mention one thing, and this is something I've heard other drummers talk about before. They say, if you want to go fast, learn finger control. And I might have said that in the past too, but now that I've continued to evolve my way of thinking, my way of teaching, I've learned that finger control technique is not about speed. That's one of the results of learning it, and that's one of the benefits of learning it, but that's not the reason you should learn it. The reason you learn finger control technique is, it's in the title. It's for control. You want to be able to have full control and full command over these drumsticks. And you want to be able to tell them exactly what to do, at exactly what dynamic, for exactly how long, and for the exact speed, whether it be slow or whether it be fast. Okay, and so that's really why I think we need to work on finger control technique. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to isolate these muscles and we're going to do our best to work on finger control and actually start to develop this technique. Now, I will kind of give you a disclaimer here. This technique is very hard to do. For me personally, it might not be for you, but this technique, I've been playing the drums now for over 15 years, and this technique is something I still work on to this day. So although I'll give you some assignments and stuff to do, don't expect for it to happen in a week, okay? Expect for it to be a very, very long process and a long evolution of your drumming. It's going to continue to get better and better, and just stick with it, no pun intended, and you will see results that will transfer onto the drum set. So all I want you to do is take a look at exercise 1 in the sheet music. Now you're seeing just a bar of 16th notes, all with right hand written above there. And so that's how we're going to start practicing finger control technique. And if you are a left-handed drummer, just go ahead and change that to left hand. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to tap the drum using fingers only. Okay, see, no wrist movement. Now this isn't a grip that I normally play with on the drum set. What I'm trying to do is really exercise these fingers and getting comfortable with how the stick is rebounding off of the practice pad. Okay? So it's almost like bouncing a basketball. You don't push the basketball back down until it comes all the way up to where you want it to go. So really exaggerate this motion. And focus on keeping the note spacings even and in time, right? Because we're going for control. This isn't all about speed. Okay? Now once you have that, what you can do is you can put on a metronome, and we're going to do it at 60 beats per minute, and we're going to play 16th notes using finger control technique. Now what's going to happen with a lot of you guys is this. And your hand's going to slide up, stuff like that. That's totally normal. It's just going to take a while to get. What has to happen is your muscles have to develop the muscle memory to know exactly how tight to hold the stick so it doesn't slide. And this takes a while because you obviously don't want to hold it too tight, and you don't want to hold it so loose that you drop the stick. So it takes a while, and you'll drop the stick a bunch, and you'll probably hold the stick too tight, but just try and find that happy medium where the stick doesn't slide up and down, and you have a nice, straight up and down stroke. Now, if you're having problems getting the straight up and down stroke, what you can do is just place your stick here. Okay? So if it's going like this all the time, put your stick here. If it's going like this, put your stick on this side. Okay? So let's take it at 60 beats per minute, and you can see how it looks. Okay, so there's no wrists involved in that, straight fingers. Now, if I were to play that pattern just with my wrist as I would normally play it on the hi-hat, what would start to happen when you actually start working on this and exercising your fingers is your fingers start to help the stick along naturally. And that's where you want it to be. You want it to be a hybrid of wrists, arms, and fingers. You don't want to go to your tom and just play fingers, okay, because you'll probably lose some of the power that your arm and your wrist provides. So you always want to have everything working in harmony. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it up a little bit faster, and we're going to do this at 100 beats per minute. Now, all I want you to do is get it at 60. Okay? Just get it at 60, and then you can go ahead and move on to the next exercise. For me, I push this 5 beats per minute at a time. Okay? I didn't push it 10, I didn't push it 20, I didn't try and jump from 60 to 100. It would have been impossible. I literally, 5 beats per minute at a time, and sometimes it took weeks or months to get between those two tempos. Okay, so let's try it at 100 and see how this sounds. All right, let's take a look at the next exercise. The next exercise is pretty much exactly the same as the first one, except we're doing it with our left hand now. Okay? Most people just work on this kind of stuff with their dominant hand because it's easier. It comes easier with your dominant hand because your dominant hand has more dexterity and it does more things that require fine motor muscles, and so you're used to that. You're used to being very specific with what you want and being able to do very specific things with your dominant hand. But that doesn't mean you leave your left hand behind or your weaker hand behind. So let's do it at 60 with our weaker hand and see how that sounds. So I quickly want to talk about what the pinky is doing. Now, when I'm doing finger control, my pinky isn't always on the stick. I'm not saying it's not there. I think it adds stability, but it's not really providing any of the motion or the push for the stick to make the stroke. And because my other fingers are much longer than my pinky, it's very hard for my pinky to stay on there. And if my pinky were to stay on there, the stick would have to be at an angle like that, which doesn't really work for me when I'm practicing finger control. And so I'm not as concerned about that, but if you want to practice with your pinky on the stick, that's totally fine and that's totally normal. I'm not saying you can't do that. Okay, so now that we've done that at 60, let's practice it again at 100 beats per minute. So what is the visual difference between doing it at 60 and 100? Well, when I was doing it at 60, you noticed that the stick was coming a lot higher because there was a lot more space in between each of those notes. And I had to let the stick rebound a little bit higher, so I was able to push it down and the timing would still be perfect. Now, when we get to 100, obviously there's less time, which means the stick heights are lower. So hopefully you've got both of those exercises down at least at 60 beats per minute. And hopefully it's feeling comfortable just playing fingers and letting that stick rebound. Now let's move on to the next exercise, which is number 3. This is an alternating exercise, which I absolutely love because it allows you to just play groups of 4 with each hand. And you'll notice when you try and play this for extended periods of time, like exercise 1 and 2, especially at the faster tempos, that your fingers fizzle out, or that you start to feel tension and it just isn't happening. So what this allows you to do is play short bursts and really get comfortable with the motions that your fingers have to make in order to move the stick. So we're going to start this one at 80 beats per minute, and then we're going to do it again at 120 beats per minute. During the faster portion of the exercise, you notice I'm really relying on the rebound of the stick to come back up. And my fingers are literally only pushing the stick down. That's it. Once the stick goes down, my fingers follow the stick back up, and then that's it. Okay, so it's a really, really good exercise in developing solid fulcrum and developing solid technique. Let's move on to the next exercise. Here's where we have a straight single stroke roll, which is right, left, right, left, right, left. And we're going to be doing this a little bit faster. We're going to start at 130 and then go all the way to 200. Now, all I want you to do is get it at least to 130. Once you can do that, feel free to move on. Because like I said, this is something that takes years to develop. So I'm hoping that you don't be obsessed with this and never stop working on this, but just work on it every time you're sitting in front of the TV, or work on it every time you have a little downtime in your car or anywhere where you have to wait. It's a really, really solid exercise. So let's do this again at 130 and 200. Now let's move on to the next exercise. What we're going to be doing here is basically a group of 4 with our right hand, a group of 4 with our left hand, and then going into a 30-second note single stroke roll. Okay, and this is something I love to do because it doesn't require you to do the 30-second notes for too long, and again, it relies on bursting. So you give your muscles a quick burst using fingers, and then you go back to the right, 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 left, 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 left. So I'll play this again for you guys at 2 tempos. We're going to do it at 70 and 110. All I want you to do is get it to 70, and then you can continue pushing it faster and faster as you get more and more comfortable. I know you're probably looking at that and being like, wow, that seems so easy and it looks so easy, but that literally took me years to get it to even that point. And what's really, really challenging is the actual start of it. You'll see a lot of guys, they'll start practicing fingers and they want to go fast, and it sounds like this, right? And it takes a while to get those notes separated. And once you can get those notes separated, it opens up a lot more doors and you can do a lot more cooler things. But this takes a long time to get. All right, let's move on to the next one. Number 6 is basically accenting on the left hand. Now, this is something I've been experimenting with a lot recently because what I found was my left hand is really falling behind. And I'm sure you have the same problems. Every drummer has a problem where their weak hand can never keep up to their dominant hand. And I always say you're only as fast, or you're only as powerful, or you only have as much control as your weakest hand. And so it's really important to work on that. And so what we're doing here is just basically accenting that with our fingers. Okay, so the accented stroke, you'll see it's going to come a lot higher, and our right hand stroke, which is the go stroke, is going to be a lot lower. So let's play this at 2 tempos. We're going to do it at 130 and again at 200. So that one's really challenging, especially with a really, really fast click, because we're basically playing on all the 16th notes. Now there is an easy way to do that, and you don't even have to use click, and it's just simple as starting it out relatively slowly and then speeding up, all accenting the left hand. And it basically just gives your left hand a workout. You're going to feel it in here, you're going to feel it in your hand. Just make sure you hold the sticks very loosely and you won't start cramping up, hopefully. As soon as you do start cramping up, just stop, even for like 5 or 10 seconds, and then continue working on the exercise. Now the next exercise basically goes through the exact same thing, except we're going to be doing that with our right hand. Okay, so let's do that at 130 and 200. And another thing you can do to practice those two techniques is just basically go in between them. Okay, so that's very challenging, something I'm still working a lot on because I find, especially with finger control, my left hand still hasn't caught up and I've worked on it like crazy. But I really, really want to get them even because I know if my left hand gets to where my right hand is, my drumming is going to be that much better. It's going to have that much more control, dynamics, and speed. All right, moving on to the next one, we're actually going to start experimenting with different note values. So all I have here is 2 beats of 16th note triplets into 2 beats of 32nd notes. Okay, so we have that note value switch, which is minor, but it's going to require your fingers to make that minor adjustment and actually start to push the sticks a little bit faster for a short amount of time. I'll do it at 2 tempos. We're going to do it at 60 and then again at 100 beats per minute. And now we're basically going to play a single paradiddle using only fingers. Now this is going to feel weird because naturally you're used to just playing straight single strokes. But now you're actually going to be playing doubles within there. So you actually have to hold the stick up for just a tiny little bit. And that's where the challenge lies. But once you get it, it just feels like you have that much more command over the sticks and that much more control. So I'll do it at 2 tempos, 80, and then again at 120. So take your time on that. Just learn it at 1 tempo, even if it's not 80, because I know it's really hard to play that slow. So even if you want to just learn it at 100, that's fine. Once you can play it really, really comfortably, go ahead and move on to the final exercise. The final exercise is one of my favorites. It basically starts out with a group of 3 8th note triplets in our right hand. Then it goes to a group of 4 16th note triplets in our left hand. Then it goes to single strokes played as 16th note triplets. And then finally 32nd notes also played as single strokes. So I'll do it at 2 tempos for you guys and show you how it sounds. Now in closing, I want to talk about a few more things. The first is I'm playing these all on a practice pad, just because I really like to focus and I really like not having any distractions around me when I do that. And also, this provides a little bit more rebound when first learning the technique. Okay? It's just a gum rubber pad. It's an HQ Real Feel practice pad made by Evans. And it's an awesome practice pad just to practice on, nothing else around you. And it's really, really good for working on these types of techniques. I also want to mention a really cool exercise just for working on finger control when you're not even at the drum set. And this is something I learned from Dom Famularo a long time ago. Basically, just hold your sticks like this, put your arm out straight, bring the stick up, and you'll see my fingers are on the stick, and the stick is resting on that, and then just practice your finger control like that. You can do it like this too. Not as much rebound then. It's just something you can do away from the practice pad and away from the kit that is really going to help improve your drumming. So here's what I want you guys to do. It's very important that you learn this. It's very important that you at least get a start on it and have a firm grasp on how important it is to incorporate fingers in your technical toolbox as a drummer. And so I really want you to learn all these exercises, even if it's just at the slower tempo, or a tempo in there. Get really comfortable with them at a certain tempo, and then feel free to move on to the next section. Next section, we're going to talk about the Moeller method, which really utilizes fingers, so you need to have good finger control technique before you kind of head into that and really start studying the Moeller method. So once you've kind of gone through all these and you have a firm grasp on these exercises, you can go ahead and move on to the next section.